Welcome to the T-ROH Show. Transmitting truth one week at a time.
Welcome to the T-ROH Show. This is a special edition due to the fact that the other hosts were not available to do this particular program. This will be a special edition of the T-ROH Show, so it will not count as one of the episodes as far as the 26th episode. I do have a couple of guests on the call, so we'll get started here. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing certain images and everything else. This is going to be quite difficult to explain. So, but one thing I can say is this is something that every so-called patriot group around the country has been looking for. The Alex Jones Show does not understand this type of thinking, and it doesn't they don't understand what what is going on, because they have all these programs. They're talking about why are people just they're trying to go with the Stockholm syndrome. Why are people just putting up with this? Why is the left just begging Islam to take over Europe and all this other kind of thing? All those things are going to be explained tonight in a way that everyone can understand and get to the bottom of it. So what I'm going to be showing you is an image here, and I'm not showing you the image so that you can just go run off to this court. Okay, this court is not what you think it is. So the best thing to do is just please listen. This is not a program or a show to say here's your remedy. And don't jump to conclusions, because a lot of people are not going to get this at first. You're going to have to listen to this program a couple of times, and then they can start thinking straight about it. So I'm going to share screens, and everything has to do with terms. Okay, so you have what they call the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. This court is not what you think it is, or what you would automatically assume it to be. Notice the flags. It has a 3-star flag. That's the 3-city state empire. That would be the Vatican, City of London, not London, England. It's a small city. It's about a mile square, and the District of Washington D.C. And you have the 50-star company flag here. And this was established, I've looked this up a couple of times, this was established in 1971. Now, this particular court deals with foreign estate proceedings, filing for a foreign estate proceeding. It deals with the Office of Registers of Wills Probate Division. This does not mean that you're going to go out there, I want to file, just relax, just pay attention to what's going on here. It says, for people who died after December 31st, 1980, domiciled outside of the District of Columbia, but owning assets in the District of Columbia at the time of death. The person appointed personal representative in the other jurisdiction must file the documents required to open a foreign estate proceeding in the District of Columbia before that person will have the authority to collect and distribute any of the assets located in the District of Columbia. Because the primary estate is not being opened in the District of Columbia, no personal representative is appointed in D.C., and no letters of administration are issued. Okay? Now, what this is dealing with is, you have to understand, Washington, D.C. is a city-state, and the District of Columbia is separate from the rest of the states. Now, they have to do, they've gone under authentication of documents, so we know it's an international court. They deal with for countries belonging to the Hague Convention abolishing the requirement of legalization of foreign public documents. I've seen that particular Hague Convention over and over. Foreign documents certified by an apostille are entitled to recognition without further authentication. You know, all these people going around trying to authenticate their birth certificate and everything? Don't do that. That's not what this is all about. Now, they have a thing where you have to appoint an agent to accept service of process. Now, that you can go through this whole thing, it's just basically what it is you're dealing with terms. And the terms are in such a way that you're dealing with notice to creditors, you're dealing with foreign estates. Please keep that in mind. You're dealing with foreign estates, anything that's not within the District of Columbia. So this does not affect you in the state of Florida or the state of Texas or California. Those are considered foreign states to this particular court. Now, the weird part about this is, why would they set up a court in the District of Columbia that specifically deals with foreign estates if you want to set up a foreign estate claim in the District of Columbia? And people would say, well, that's easy. It's because that's if you own property in the District of Columbia. That would be presumptuous. That would seem normal and would seem correct. It'd be like, yeah, well, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Here's the kicker. They did this in 1971. In 1972 was when they went off the Bretton Woods Agreement, which was where you had gold backing the money. So a year after this particular court was established, they went off the Bretton Woods Agreement. Anybody that doesn't know what the Bretton Woods Agreement was, it started back just after World War II or close to it. And that's where all the money around the world was backed by gold. So somebody knew that the money was going to be backed by something else at this time in 1971. And it gets real detailed. I mean, you can do a notice appointment of foreign personnel representative to publications chosen by the filer. It goes on and on. I mean, it's very detailed. There's 11 pages of it. Then you have to appoint an agent, appointment of agent to accept service of process, and notice of appointment of foreign personal representative, and notice to creditors. And be very clear that they're talking about notice to creditors over and over in this when you're dealing with a foreign estate. And they even give you the forms if you'd like to have the forms. And I know that the patriot groups are going to go around and they're going to go, well, the all-cap name is the deceased person, so I can do it. Stop. Just please stop. That is not what this is about. Don't even try getting into that direction. Because it's set up under plausible deniability. Just understand that. Okay? They set this whole thing up, the decedent-owned District of Columbia personal property strike proceeding a sentence, and it goes off. It's a completely separate subject matter, which gives them plausible deniability for what is going on here. Okay, remember the year 1971. Remember the year 1972, the Bretton Woods Agreement was gone. They went off the gold standard. Number 3, remember the 1976 Declaration of Interdependence, which was connected all the way back to the pledge of May 5th, 1933, made by Roosevelt, where he pledged you and he pledged himself to the New Deal, and he pledged you to a crusade, giving the Americas back to the rightful owners and all this other jazz that they went on. Okay? I haven't even gotten to the whole thing, so please do not come to any conclusions. Now, when you're dealing with the state taxes and requirements for estates with international issues, the U.S. estate tax filing requirements of a decedent's estate are determined by whether at death the decedent was a U.S. citizen. Now, let's go down here. Look at this term here. They threw this in there just out of nowhere. The worldwide estate of a U.S. citizen or a U.S. resident is subject to U.S. tax, and the executor of such estate is required to file a U.S. estate tax return. A non-citizen, non-resident decedent will be subject to U.S. estate tax on U.S. situs assets. Those are assets that can be moved from one jurisdiction to another. It says, and it goes on to all of the decedent's worldwide ownership interests. Okay. Now, let's go over here to statelessness. In international law, statelessness is a lack of citizenship. A stateless person is someone who is not considered as a national by any state under the operation of its law. Some stateless persons are also refugees. However, not all refugees are stateless, and many persons who are stateless have never crossed an international border. Many persons who are stateless have never crossed an international border. Most people belonging to a stateless nation, despite lacking their own nation state, nonetheless hold citizenship in one or more countries, in some cases effectively as a second-class citizen, or as second-class citizens. So, in order to be stateless, you do not have to cross an international border. Keep in mind that the particular court that you're talking about is it deals with foreign estates. Now I'm going to be saying foreign estates over and over and over again, but that is not the subject matter of the court, even though the court states that that's what it is. It's not the subject matter. The subject matter is dealing with the estate and what is actually being claimed. You still have your name, you still have all your credentials, you still have all these things, and not actually have claim to your own estate. And I'll explain that here in just a little while. Now, making claims against the decedent's estate says if a debtor dies with a valid will that has been admitted to probate, and then the named personal representative, aka executor or executrix, typically is appointed by the clerk of the court to administer the estate of a deceased debtor in this case. Filing a timely claim against the estate once the PR is appointed is the best and most effective means for a creditor to protect its rights. Right here. So we're talking about companies, corporations, that type of thing. If the bank is a company, that's no issues there. If the word "it's" doesn't say, oh, it's a corporation, we're all against corporations. That's not what that means. All it is it's just dealing with making claims against a decedent's estate, and this is how the creditors do it. Okay, so if they want to make a claim against a decedent's estate, remember that the Bank of New York Mellon is in Manhattan Island, and its jurisdiction is in the District of Columbia. So that would mean, by common sense, that this particular court right here is used by the Bank of New York Mellon. And it goes even further than that. Okay, so they're acknowledging that the states within the union are foreign to them. Because remember, if you call yourself creditor in this country, that's a death offense there. You can't say that. So the creditors in commerce and stuff, stop what you're doing. You're completely gone. All these others, I don't know, creditor and what's the other term, guys? These guys are using around here. Creditors in commerce, and then they're using something else. No? Okay.
Secured party creditor.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, so a secured party creditor. So they're trying to do that. And that's not what this is about. Okay, so the secured party creditor guys, just stop what you're doing. You're wasting your time. Completely a waste of time. What we're trying to do is get rid of all these stupid processes and procedures because they're completely off, way off to what's really going on in this country. Now, if you don't have like a oath or affirmation or something of that nature, or a residency somewhere that does acknowledge you, you're considered stateless. So if we go back to this, now if you're considered stateless and never crossed an international border, that's considered abandoned property, abandoned estates. So hopefully you can see where I'm going with this, okay? That's considered abandoned estates. So what they're going to do is they're going to use that court since 1971 to keep claiming all these abandoned estates over and over and over again. Because there's an IRS form here that says if you're not within one of the United States judicial districts, you're considered as being within the District of Columbia. That's how they operate. I can't remember the IRS case, but I can find it and show it to people. If you're not within one of the United States judicial districts, you're considered to be within the District of Columbia. So, all this being said, we're going back to, there's your court, there's your statelessness, and there's all this other stuff going on. Now, there's an organization called the Holy Sepulchre. It's called the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem, and that's in North America. Okay, now this particular organization has a, you'll be able to find a lot of it, information about them by Leo Zagami. There's an interview, it's called Demonic Possession of the Vatican Exposed, and it's an Alex Jones show. And he goes over to there and he shows you, he goes right in front of there in a minute 26 or 27. He goes right in there and shows you where this particular Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre is. Okay, and they're in Roma, Italy. Now, Roma is the Italian statement or a word for Rome. So they just added an A to it in Italian. Okay, so this Holy Sepulchre has what they call U.S. lieutenancies in the United States. And they have governor generals. This is a very, very old organization. They welcome to the website of North Central Lieutenancy, they call it. It says welcome. It says Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. According to Zagami, he stated a couple of things that were very interesting that stuck with me when I listened to him. And I kept going back and I went back and listened to it about 2 or 3 times and said, am I getting this right? Am I understanding what's going on here? What he was saying is that the Holy Sepulchre, the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem, is a completely separate city-state from Vatican City or the Vatican. They have their own territory, which was donated to them. I believe it was back in the 20s, 30s, 40s in that area, a long while ago. So it's a completely separate city-state. He also said that their organization was full of pedophiles. Now, that was his opinion. I don't know if it's absolutely true, based on what I've been noticing and what we've been hearing for the past 10 years about what's going on in the Catholic Church. That is probably true. He also said they're in a lot of debt, massive amounts of debt. And I don't know who their so-called creditors would be. We don't know for sure. If they have their own particular city-state, it's called the city-state of the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. It's its own city-state. It's its own country. So when you walk through their doors, you actually need a passport to get through the door because that's a completely separate country. Their religion is very curious, okay? I went in and took a look, and they have, here's Roma. Okay, I'll stop sharing and have to reshare it. Okay, this is Roma. This is Rome. Okay, and here's the map of it right here. And y'all remember that commercial, I'm your Venus, I'm your fire, more desire? Remember that? This is the old church. This is their religion, okay? And it deals with the goddess Venus, and Roma, believe it or not. This particular, they still use this temple. I'll prove that here in just a minute. This is where the basis of their religion came from. These are the canopies they put up every Good Friday when they do the fish thing. On Good Friday, they put up all these canopies right here. So they still use this. This is their goddess. Okay, this is De Roma Vittoriano. Okay, and y'all remember this symbol here? You see that on TV? There's a production studio that uses that symbol with the wings. Okay, that's their religion. Now, this is also the religion of those under the Charter of the Judges. All the U.S. federal judges are under this religion. Anybody who becomes a part of this, like Bush Jr., Bush Sr., and all them, they all have their allegiance to the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. They're completely foreign to the United States, to the White House, to the District of Columbia, to the Vatican, to the City of London, and basically any other country in the world when they become a part of the Holy Sepulchre and when they take their oath to it. So essentially, you've had foreign presidents in the White House. Now, whether Donald Trump is a part of this, I don't know. Judging by what I'm seeing, he's probably not. I just have to kind of say he's probably not, because they keep reversing his orders. So essentially what you have are foreigners sitting on benches making decisions for you. Now, here's the question. What type of decisions are they making? That's the whole thing. What are they doing? That doesn't make any sense. None of this makes any sense. Okay? So, internal revenue. So you have to hear me out on what Zagami was talking about and Leo was talking about. He kept saying that they are after all of the intellectual property of the world. He says all the symbols and all this other stuff. That doesn't make any sense. How can someone make claim without trespassing on everybody else on their intellectual property, their let's just say their logos and all that stuff? Okay, that would be out and outright theft. It'd be very difficult to pull that off. So either Leo Zagami didn't understand it, or he was a plant just basically saying, yeah, here they are, but we're going to throw you off on another trail. Now, my guess is, and by looking at the man and all the stuff that he did, he probably just doesn't fully understand what the guys are up to in the Sepulchre. Okay. The equestrian order of the Holy Sepulchre. Okay. He also said a lot of these guys are just pedophiles. So you have let's revamp here. You have a U.S. judge sitting on a bench in a federal court, and I'm pretty sure that all the state courts are under the same thing, under the Charter of the Judges, and we've talked about that on the T-ROH Show before. And they're making decisions on people that are considered either stateless or they're a foreign estate. So let's just say that, for argument's sake, they're a foreign estate to that particular judge, because that particular judge is working out of the District of Columbia. What is he actually doing? Okay, people would say, well, what about my estate? How are you guys doing this? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of confusion in the patriot communities, patriot groups. There's a lot of confusion on InfoWars on what they're doing. So let's get to property. Let's get to separating those property definitions. We have covered this before under the driver's license and dealing with intangible property. We said this over and over and over again. I'll say it again, but I'm going to say it in a different context. Okay? Intangible property is different from tangible property. Keep in mind that the equestrian order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem is not after your tangible property. Tangible property would be your car, your clothes, your house. Intangible property would be your right to that house. In other words, when you're in your home, okay, that's your intangible property, which is a right to be there. And it's upheld. Are you the owner of the home? Yes, I have the intangible property right to that home. I have the right to use it. They go, okay, good. That's how you define whether your house has been trespassed upon, whether your house has been broken into, because there was somebody there that did not have the intangible property right to that particular house, whether they owned it or not, because you could also have the intangible property right to something you don't actually own. That's called a rental agreement. Is your name on the lease? Is your name on the rental agreement? If it is, you have the intangible property right to that home. Same with a car. Is your name on the lease? If your name is on the lease, you don't necessarily have to own the car, the tangible property, in order to have the right to use it. The same goes in every case around the world. Everybody knows this. Everybody understands this within their societies. So, since intangible property is so abundant, why not use that to back your money? Because there are new intangibles that are created every day. So the court here is not about dealing with foreign estates per se. They have to have jurisdiction over those foreign estates in order for it to for them to proceed upon the rules. However, what they're doing is they're claiming the intangible property right to the estate, even if the estate is in your possession. The estate could be in your possession. You could go in there and say, okay, Dad died. He's got 5 companies, 15 cars, construction equipment, whatever else he's got. He's got properties all over the place. They're not after that. They don't want those properties because why? Because the equestrian of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem doesn't want to have to take care of it. What they want is the intangible property right to that estate. You being the heir. They say they have a lot of debts. So I don't agree with that. I don't think they have a lot of debts at all. I think what they have, and they're saying this is what the emergency is about and all this other stuff, not true. I don't believe that's true at all, because they want to cause the confusion, to hide the fact that they're not after the estates and or property. They are after the intangible property right to it. Now, what happens if you have a house that's paid for and you don't pay the property taxes? Well, they eventually take the house and they put it in a house sale, okay? Why? Because they know you own the property. What you don't fully own and what has been claimed against you is the intangible property to the property. And they're renting that to you. You have a right to stay there as long as you pay the rent to the intangible property of the right to use the property, not the property itself. That's why all the addresses are in the middle of the road. They're not on the house itself. They're only taxing your intangible property right to that house. They do the same thing with cars. They do the same thing to the EU. Now I'm going to tell you why. The European Union, and what they did not tell you was the European Union, when the countries joined that union, they lost the intangible property right to their boundaries and borders. That's why they're being forced to accept all of these refugees. Under the terms and conditions of the union, the bankers did not take the countries. They did not take anything else other than the intangible property right of the government itself to their own metes and bounds, boundaries, and borders. Globalism is not about relieving people of their metes and bounds. It's about relieving the country of its intangible property right to its metes and bounds. It's not about relieving you of your estate. They still need you to take care of it and to expand the value of it. They don't even want that value. They just want a little bit of it. It's called the intangible property right to that estate. They just want that part. Now, what I'm about to tell you again may turn around, okay? And people will try to create this in their head that, oh, if I do this, this will work. I'm going to tell you why. They're saying you don't have an intangible property right to the Constitution. Now, the very first thing these constitutionalists are going to do is say, well, I'm going to claim my intangible right to the Constitution. Don't do that. Because it was that Constitution that was designed to take your intangible property right in the first place. I'm not saying go over to the Superior Court District of Columbia that was set up in 1971 and start making property claims, okay? The intangible property rights to it. I'm not doing that because that court is designed to go one way and one way only. That court, in my opinion, is an illegal court because it's only for certain people to be able to collect and or claim your intangible property right to your estate. So stop thinking so literal. You have to think the way that these guys think in order to understand what they're doing. The New World Order, and the reason why they are so confident and so feel like they're so into everything and all these people are so arrogant is because when they're told that the property or the money is backed by intangible property and that it can be created every day and collapsed every day. That's why the stock market goes up and down, because intangible property changes every day. That's why when a company, for instance, when a company's stocks start going down, it's because the intangible property right has switched to somebody else. The intangible property right to the stocks of that country or that company. So when they get a new president in or they get a new this, new that, okay, of that company or CEO, the stocks go down, it's not because that people have lost their what do you call it, their faith in that company. It just means that confidence has to be rebuilt because well, that's kind of a bad way of saying it. The intangible property right to that company has switched hands. So the stock values go down. Now it's up to that CEO to prove himself that he's going to be running it the same way the other one did, which brings the intangible property right back up again. That's all that happens when you're buying stocks into a business. When you buy stocks into a business, you're buying intangible property rights to that business. And that's what's being taxed. That's why when you buy stocks and you make capital gains is a intangible property right to that business. Whether you own 50% of the shares, 75% of the shares, 90%, 99% of the shares, or 51% of the shares. Stocks have always dealt with intangible property rights. Somebody that owns 51, the rest own 49, you can outvote them because you have more intangible property rights to that business, even though it's a public business. So here's your condition. You have, let's see if I can get this back up again. You have a completely foreign country called the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem that has have a stranglehold on everybody's intangible property rights to anything. And they can reverse this because they're saying that they own your intangible property rights to whatever it is that you have. They didn't take your estate. They didn't take any of the property, the tangible property. What they took was your intangible property right to it. They don't mortgage the house because the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem doesn't want to own your house. They don't own it. What they do is they mortgage your intangible property right to the house. Then they use that money that they bring in to create more intangibles. They loan it back out to create another intangible to something else, to create, and they do this up to 10 times. They're creating intangibles, folks. They're not creating money. Intangibles is the name of the game of the New World Order. And it can go on forever and ever and ever. There's only one problem here. Intangible property was never transferred to the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. It was listed in the international records as being abandoned, and therefore they made a claim against it. It is not very specific, or not specific at all, within a mortgage agreement on a house that it was actually your intangible property to the house. Because when they say the property, not necessarily it's legally described here, not necessarily the house itself. It's your intangible property to it. In order for intangible property to change hands, there has to be a written agreement to do that. It has to be in writing, very specific, and it has to be what they call a bilateral agreement. It cannot be done under unilateral agreement. Unilateral agreement means that one side changes the terms and conditions of a contract and the other side has to abide by it. All state statutes today do nothing but govern your intangible property to things. That's the subject matter of those statutes. It's a subject matter of all acts. It's the subject matter of the New World Order. If anyone has any questions, you can jump in anytime. If you want to make a point, you can jump in anytime.
So, Keith, since this is all being done unilaterally, how do we correct this?
My thinking, okay, and understanding what was found here, okay, and the understanding that was found, my thinking is that I believe we just make an international, national, public claim to all intangible property that you have. Now, that would say to me, okay, that would be kind of a reverse, because that would be saying the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem had the right to take it or to claim it, or that somehow it was abandoned. So the claim could actually turn into something like that you never gave it to anyone, and it was never abandoned type thing. You know what I mean? We're still working on it as far as that's concerned, and on the logical way of handling this situation. That's why I said didn't want anybody to just jump out and do something, because there's a lot of things that this is a very touchy situation.
Well, to me, this would be like a counter deed. And a counter deed totally destroys any public deed. And they've made a claim, but the claim has never been negated. So now we're coming forward and saying, no, I'm sorry. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to us. This is mine. That's just the way I look at it.
Yeah, we could do that. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. But if you go back a step further, did the good Lord, the Creator, give up his right of ownership to give anybody anything other than trusteeship over it?
Which is the very definition of intangible property.
That's correct. Okay. Then the scepter over there, they are attempting to claim all the intangible property and kick out the legal trustees. And I believe all of it, in fact, still belongs to the Creator.
Well, he did give us dominion,
Permission
which
to
was,
use it.
he did give us dominion, which was intangible property to something.
The trusteeship on it, true.
Yeah. So that being the case, are these guys sitting on the throne? Are they just diverting something? Or whatever. I mean, everybody in their lieutenancies, all these guys are foreigners. They don't have anything even to do with the U.S. They don't know even U.S. citizens.
That's true. But are they in violation of basically a contract between yourself as trustee and the Most High?
Okay, which can be interpreted into religious rights. They can
That's
also, it also would be a speech problem.
It's a contract.
They're infringing on your speech.
Yep, the contract rights.
And that's the problem with the New World Order. And that's why the New World Order always fails. Has failed. This is not the first time this has been done. They were able to hide it from generation to generation and keep doing the same thing over and over again, still trying to do the same thing that will never work. Because they always go towards the theft. Every single stinking time, they always go towards the theft. And they always get caught. So your direction on this is not towards the Pope and not towards the Vatican. It's not towards the City of London. It's not towards the District of Columbia. It would be towards the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. They're the ones that are trying to claim the intangible property rights of everyone in the world. They're favoring their claim. Okay, so now let's put ourselves in those shoes for a second. You have the intangible property rights of everyone. Now, what you could do is this. You could lend what you have to another group over another group. Okay, so you could lend your intangible property rights to Islam over that of the French, English, Austrians, the Germans, all through Europe. You could also do the same thing in America by stating and reversing an order that these particular Muslim countries cannot, will not be taken. We're not taking anybody from these particular Muslim countries. You can control everything, not with money. That's what they want you to believe. With the intangible property rights that backs the money, because it's legally considered property.
True, but if they claim all the intangible property away from the people as trustees, then that means that they got a bunch of people up here, no place to go.
Can't say a word. Yeah, those people really can't say anything. But you know, how many people have gone in court and they can't say a word?
Well, not that as much as it is. They're going to have to eliminate those people because they're all trespassing.
Okay, so here's what was the first sin? First sin wasn't murder. The first sin was theft.
Yep.
You had to steal, and once you steal, you got to kill the guy that you stole from so that you can keep what you stole. It's the same thing that they're saying today. They're trying to eliminate everyone on Earth so they don't get caught stealing all of their intangible property rights to everything.
Well, you eliminate the witnesses. How can you take it to court?
That's right. They can never be sued.
So if they get rid of 6.5 billion people after they claim their intangible property rights, and I believe that's what the New World Order is attempting to do.
Yeah, that's the whole plan. So now that everybody gets that, now you understand what the left is going through. What they're going through is training. They're being trained to accept that they don't have any intangible property rights, not even to their own life.
Once you lose your intangible property like that, right, that's when you become what they call a useless eater.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but tangible and intangible property rights, I look at that as what is actually given to us. And we were created in the image of our Creator. Our Creator is the sovereign. And if we are in His image, then what are we? Other than another sovereign.
Your trustee is a state.
I think they're trying to they're trying to steal that away from everybody.
Well, let's make this clear. You are not a sovereign due to the simple fact that He didn't give you sovereignty.
But I was made in His image, and He is a sovereign.
That's all great, but He didn't give you sovereignty. If He did,
No,
you
sir.
wouldn't be here.
He said, "Go forth and procreate."
Mm-hmm.
Go forth is where He made you trustee over His property.
His estate.
He gave you,
Which means, wait a minute, that means that He gave you intangible property rights to His property and His creations.
Absolutely. You just nailed it right there. You have intangible property rights as being sovereign because as a sovereign, you owe Him because He is above you. He is the sovereign.
Therefore, you cannot be a sovereign.
That's correct. You can only be trustee of His sovereignty, His estate.
Every sovereign owes themselves to someone higher.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
But see, in America, we don't deal with monarchs.
Okay?
Right.
And because
I'm not looking at this from a monarch standpoint.
Well, that's exactly what you're looking at, is because a monarch claims himself to be sovereign, and that's exactly what happens. So men cannot be sovereign. That's it.
And a monarch is no more than you are. He's simply a trustee upon the most highest property.
Right, and a bunch of people gave him
under the verbal,
their intangible property to administer their estates. That's what happened. That's all that agreement is.
I'll give you my opinion. My opinion is that I am a sovereign over the land that my creator created, but I owe everything to my creator, and he is the sovereign over me and everything else.
I get
And
it, but that
what
doesn't-
you're divulging right now is 100% correct. This is how everything has freaking been misconstrued to everybody else.
With the guise of the Queen and King of the Republic, and therefore justifying the term sovereign is inappropriate. It's incorrect, and that's where the confusion comes into lay with us as the trustee.
The king and the queen are no more than a trustee because they're not sovereign on the land. They're just sovereign over what they say they claim, which it's a false claim because it doesn't belong to them. Belongs to the Creator, the Most High.
Correct.
They're simply bully-sized big club trustees. They've stolen that property they're claiming.
And they've duped everybody into thinking that they're sovereign. That's number one. That's why it's a today. That's why the America never accepted that here. They didn't want monarchs here. Got sick and tired.
That's right.
Because it was a fraud. It was a biblical fraud. It was a belief fraud. It was a religious fraud. There was all kinds of fraud involved in it. So they didn't want to deal with that anymore. They just wanted to deal with the trustee status of your trustee over, and the trustee does, in fact, legally, lawfully, have intangible property rights to things, to the property that's acquired and given to them.
Yeah, basically, isn't this now go back to the cast out one, Lucifer?
Mm-hmm.
He tried to do the same thing to
He tried to say he was a sovereign. Yeah.
he tried
you're
to
both,
he tried
John,
to
you're both totally correct. You're totally correct.
Yeah. And I mean, that was the argument. He tried to say he was sovereign. And when he did, okay, see ya. Out the door you go.
he got his butt thrown out, and he come down here now, and he's trying to do the same thing here.
Over and over and over again. They do
That's
the same
correct.
thing over again. And it doesn't work.
That's where your Luciferian church and all this other stuff comes in, your worshipers.
So they're following Luciferianism, and they're trying to do what this guy has been trying to do for thousands of years, and it's never worked from the beginning.
It will never work because the Most High is not going to give up his property.
And he's not going to take away your intangible property right to it.
That's a contract between you and him.
He's upholding his agreements.
And he won't breach that agreement.
But these guys here, this guy over on the left, he did. You want to know why or what happened to him? That's what happened. His estate went in ruins. That's what happened to him. And it sits there. He's got like a half a dome here. That's what happened to the guy.
Looks like his estate's in pretty poor shape.
Mm-hmm.
For lack of maintenance.
There you go. This is what happened to a guy that thought he was sovereign. It did not understand the trustee status.
Yep.
Of what they call the holy estate. Okay. The holy estate would be everything you see. See, we didn't make these trees. We may have planted them, but we didn't make them. We didn't make dirt that created this. We didn't make the cement and all this crap that we didn't do any of that. All we did was take what was already here that came before us. And what we did was we put it together. And then this guy got this big old thing going here. And he started creating this chick right here. This was Roma and Venus. And that's why you have these these commercials. I'm your Venus. I'm your fire, more desire. I'm your fire. Hello, Luciferianism.
Yeah, I'm here for more desire.
Yeah, they created gods to under enlightenment and ascension and all this other jazz that they come up with to try to overcome the original contract of trustee status of man. That's it. That's all this argument's about. And so what happens is if they want to create a collapse, this is what they do. As of right now, and as their record stands, which is basically a false record, they remove all intangible property from the monetary system, and it all collapses. That's how much control they have. This is how much a little pedophile ring has. A man that likes to have sex with children has control over the world economy. That's some scary crap, guys.
Yes,
Doesn't this really go back to Genesis 1?
Yeah.
Genesis 1. It's all goes right there.
Yeah.
what we got today, Luciferian, is false gods. And you were warned about worshiping false gods.
Good Friday right here, guys.
But we had the original contract. We had the original trust that was set in Genesis 1. That's the way I've always looked at it. We were supposed to be stewards. We're supposed to be trustees of the land. And everything's been reversed on us.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, actually, your intangible property rights have been taken. Your trustee status has been taken without cause. There was no cause to do this. And there's no religious right that gives an individual the right to do this. Islam doesn't have the right to do what they're doing.
No one has the right to come in and break a contract between two different people. They're not party to that contract. They got no authority to interfere with it. And that's what they've done. They came over and they've tried to break the contract.
So was that, just to help me out here, was that explained? I mean, does it make sense now?
Makes total sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes 100% sense. I was looking forward to this week's call with your slideshow, but
Well,
I guess maybe
this is a special edition, so we can do that later on. We can do it. Now, the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. Now, these men have lost their way. They have made a deal, and a deal that they're trying to pull you into. Okay? The people in this particular equestrian order over here may not be that bad. Maybe they have no idea. So that doesn't mean that you can go out just because this has happened and this has all been figured out. You can go out and just start nailing these guys, because these guys have to have a chance to repent and turn around and turn their ways. They may not have known. So I'm not trying to make demons out of the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. There's probably a lot of good people in there. And a lot of the bad people are using the good people as cover. You follow what I'm saying? That happens a lot. They use a lot of the bad guys use good guys as cover. That happens in almost every organization. And they want, anytime they get caught in what they're doing, they always blame it on the good guys to get out of their crime. Happens all the time.
Well, I believe we made the first step to break this system that they got going by renouncing satanic orders.
Yeah, there is a claim you can renounce your all the kingdoms, satanic kingdoms, and or the Luciferian kingdoms of the world. You can find that renunciation on the United States of America 1781. That's 1781.com. DOT. That's Department of Transportation. DOT. So the United States of America 1781.com/DOT. That's some of the first steps that we've gone. It's been part of the resident declaration and claiming a nationality and doing all the things that we're doing. We added that to it. Now, we might have something here in the very near future that you can do in dealing with this intangible property right deal, okay? But we have to do it in such a way. There's only one way to do it. There's 1,000 ways not to do it. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people will look at this and probably figure out 1,000 ways not to do it. But there's only one way, and that answer will come soon. But first we have to face the problem and the source of the problem in dealing with this overtaking the West. These guys are getting orders from someone, and they're getting orders from these people here. The Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. That's where all the orders are coming from. They're not coming from the Pope.
Well, we took the first step when we claimed our nationality to this country over here.
Mm-hmm. Which gave you the intangible property right to the metes and bounds.
To the metes and within the metes and bounds, correct?
Yeah, it gave you the intangible property right to a government. It gave
Then
you
we
an intangible property right to the metes and bounds and territory of the country, and it also gave you the intangible property right to human rights and all other things, all other intangible property rights. Like, don't we have a proof of life certificate that replaces the birth certificate? Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Then when we renounced renounced the satanic orders out there, that actually reclaimed our trusteeship.
Mm-hmm.